Hi, Terrence. How's it going?
I'm doing well, thank you.
All right, welcome to the show, man. Thank you for being on.
Of course,
So,
not a problem.
yeah, thank you so much. So, I want to welcome Terrence Li to our inaugural show here. And first of all, I just want to thank Terrence for participating. Terrence delivered a great presentation just last month at the Montreal Traders Meetup, where he really shared his trading story, his journey, and some of the lessons he's learned along the way. So, in this podcast, we're really going to be diving into these perspectives. That's kind of the nature of the show, is to hear the perspectives of other traders, and just to build out that community of traders here in Montreal. And of course, anyone else who's tuning in, you're welcome to be part of this community as well. So thanks again, Terrence. So why don't we just jump right into things and save people from having to listen to me too much. So as I mentioned already at the meetup, you really share with us, your compelling trading story. So for the listeners out there, why don't you spend a bit of time telling us again about, how you got started trading, maybe, how you evolved and where you're at now through trading.
Of course, not a problem. So just bear with me because my story is quite long. So I'm a French-Canadian born Chinese, and I've always had an identity crisis. And the reason is because whenever I go on vacation, people ask me, where am I from? Well, I usually reply, I'm from Canada. And they tell me, you don't look Canadian. What's your nationality? So that's why I say that I'm a FCBC, and I'm a French-Canadian born Chinese. And also, being in Quebec, a lot of the francophones, they ask me, where do I come from, even though I'm born in Montreal. And in French, they say, d'où viens-tu? And I say, je viens de la Chine, which is also in the translation in French is in China. But I tell them that, tu te trompes, moi je viens de la Chine, Québec, because basically in Montreal, there's a city called La Chine. So I'm actually from there, and I live in that neighborhood, and I don't really come from China. So growing up, I'm a total geek. I love computer games such as Red Alert 2, Counter-Strike. I love card trading games such as Pokemon and Magic the Gathering. And when I turned 18, I was a card counter at the blackjack tables. And being there, I had like a specific routine. And after I went back to school, I didn't go to the casino anymore because card counting, it's a skill that you need to practice every single day. So if you don't continue it, you'll lose it. And then I moved on to poker, but I realized that I don't have the patience for that, just waiting for the good cards to come to me. So I also, if you can't tell, I'm Asian. So I had a bad childhood due to my Asian tiger parents. And I had what you call a tiger mom, which is someone who would not validate my emotions and choices and decisions in life if it were not her ideals. So I never really developed the self-confidence or the self-esteem that my decisions that I made was accepted or validated. So in the end, I followed their guidance, and I got what you call a bachelor's in bioorganic chemistry degree, and also a master's in business administration. But I never trusted educational institution, and the reason is because how much of the things that you learn from school does it apply to work? It's like roughly like 10% or even less. So more or less, I was what you call clueless about my existence. And I had all the opportunities in the world to be successful. I was interning at the United Nations, and here in Montreal, I was holding down a lot of government jobs. But I really despised working after graduation. And the reason is because the work that I did was really repetitive. Okay. And I feel that if you're not growing, you're dying. So after graduation, I also held down 3 other jobs, which is what I call a night job, a side job, and a personal job. And so I had 4 jobs in total. And the reason why I had 4 jobs is because I thought that when you have a lot of money, it brings you more self-esteem and self-confidence, but that's completely BS. So I started diving in the stock market in 2010 after deciding that poker was not for me. And I started more or less first as a value investor, and then I moved on to trading because at work I was so bored. I started to trade.
Okay.
But I also had a childhood dream that I wanted to, achieve. But one of the most monumental moment of my life was seeing death with my own eyes. When I saw my previous girlfriend, mother, die. She had lung cancer, and she was on her deathbed. And she was at the end, just right before her death, she was kind of spewing out all her regrets.
Yeah.
He was telling her daughter that I shouldn't have never had you. I shouldn't have never married your father.
Wow.
And when I was there, I was just super shocked because I was like, I don't want to live my life that way. When I die, I don't want to have regrets like that.
Yeah.
So at that point, I took a stand in my life. And after more or less of 1 year, I quit my comfortable public sector job to pursue my childhood dream. And what was my childhood dream? Well, during my childhood, I've always loved to dance. I've been dancing for many years. I've been in dance competitions. I've been in dance shows. I've battled other people.
Okay.
And I actually opened my very own dance studio. Which is quite interesting, right?
Yeah.
So the reason why I got into dance in the first place was because I don't think I got any validation from my parents, so I searched it from others.
Yeah.
And that was basically it. And I opened my
instant feedback from dancing, right? The dancing gave you the feedback that you wanted
exactly.
to do. Yeah.
Totally. And a couple months into my dance business, I knew opening it was just a bad idea, and I failed because every obstacle that came my way, I crumbled.
Oh.
From the marketing aspect of it, to the dealing with clients, to getting clients, and I just couldn't do it. And then what happened was I closed down my studio, and depression hit, and I had suicidal thoughts, and I almost committed suicide.
How long ago was this, if you don't mind me asking?
Yep, this was approximately 6 months.
Wow, okay.
So quite recent.
Yeah.
And at that time, I had a lot of side effects. I was hallucinating, I had migraines, and I was just frantically screaming. Basically, I'm not in my body. This is not my reality, because I couldn't accept, my own failure.
Yeah.
So the three concepts, more or less, that led me to depression was money, shame, and identity. The reason why money was such a big issue is that I have immigrant parents, and they are penny pinchers. So whenever you lose money, they get really critical, and they call you stupid, or you should have stuck with your job.
Yeah.
The other thing was shame, and this is I couldn't handle it because all my friends were mocking me because they were calling me stupid. Like you were on the path to success, and you kind of ruined it, or self-sabotaged it.
Yeah.
And the third one was that was really difficult to get over is I had this identity issue. And the reason is because once I failed in my dance business, I didn't know who I was as a person, and I didn't know what the next step was for me.
Yeah.
So it's been really rough, but in the end, I actually had the opportunity to overcome my depression by journaling every single day to help me solve my inner complexes. And
talk more about that. So what was that transition like? How did you move away from that darker place and begin to get back into a groove where you could be productive again and feel good about things?
For me, I use what you call SMART goals, but the fact that when I was in depression, I was very angry at myself. And I somehow used that anger to push me out of depression, because I was just laying in my bed for 16 hours and I was telling myself, why am I in bed? Why am I not doing anything? Why am I not doing anything to better my situation? Yeah. More or less. And then I realized that's when I wanted to start journaling in the first place. Yeah. I've always wanted to journal, and I feel that a lot of people say that it's very difficult to do, but it's worth it. You'll learn so much about yourself.
Yeah. And I remember in the Meetup, that was one of your big messages that you were trying to relay to people, is the importance of understanding yourself, especially as it pertains to, obviously, we're talking trading specifically, but it has so many more, bigger effects than just inside of trading. But as it pertains to trading, is obviously another, has a really, really big beneficial effect as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So at that time, it was in January, I was actually trading while depressed.
Yeah.
And 2 months into depression, I hit Jackpot.
Tell us about that story. Yeah, tell us about that story.
So what does Jackpot mean to me? It means it's a 5-figure trade. So I gained 5 figures. No, I did not make $99,000 or $999, but it was approximately 10K.
Yeah. So it was a good trade, and how that helped you? What was the, maybe you could share us the trade, and like what kind of, led you into that trade, and then, what transpired after that Jackpot trade? How did that change you?
Of course. So I love bull flags. So okay. I love looking at stocks that are like super bullish and they just kind of more or less ascend nonstop. It doesn't happen often, but when you get into a particular industry, it's just crazy. So the stock that I traded back then, it was TSGI, which is the Stars Group. Okay. And basically, they're the owners of Poker Stars, and also they're doing sports betting now. Okay. So at that time, everybody was hyped because we just recently had the World Cup of Soccer, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And everybody knew that, in Europe, everybody bets nonstop. Even in Quebec, everybody's playing mise au jeu. Right? Yeah. And I kind of just caught on to that trend, and I made a lot of money. Yeah. So you caught that out of a bull flag, is that right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And was it something that you had was it a high conviction trade, or was it it was just such a big mover that you made a jackpot winning? So what was it like? Did you size up because you had a high conviction in the trade, or did this just take off and you just made a lot of money because it just, No, I actually, I have been kind of analyzing that stock for a long time. Yeah. And it wasn't just conviction. It was just more the fact that I knew that there was so much momentum going into it. Okay. And obviously the rumors that came into it, because they're actually expanding into India at this moment. Ah, interesting. Okay. And so do you think, did you take on a bigger size position than you normally do because of the fact you knew that company well and you had a really good feeling for that stock? I didn't really look at that because I was depressed and suicidal. I don't care about money anymore. I just dumped my whole life savings in it. Okay. Yeah. And then how did you have the wherewithal to hold on to that trade till it became a big winner? Sometimes people get into big winners and they're so happy to just make a bit of money if they've been losing money for a time, that they just take off the winner too quickly before it becomes a big winner, right? So what allowed you to kind of hold on to that winner so that it became a jackpot winner, as you say? So for me, mostly I always trade near, when there's a earnings report that's coming, everybody kind of gets very bullish at that point, and that's at that point where I traded that stock. I see. Okay. Because there was so much news and rumors about it, we were expecting a greater profit. Yeah. So it was a trade going into earnings then, is that right? Exactly. Okay. Nice. And so the stock popped up big after earnings. Is what happened? Then you take off right away, say thank you, Yeah, obviously. I always do that. Okay. I have to. All right. Nice. Thanks for sharing that. So after that, you hit the jackpot, and then tell me what happens after that. What changed? What happened after that? Of course. So I was super happy, and it was like more or less a monumental moment, right? Okay. And then I told myself, hey, let's look into trading even more, because I just made 10K, and I was like, oh, I must be good at this, right? But then as I did more trades, I lost 50% of my jackpot testing trading strategies. Yeah. And the reason why I lost 50% was because I made the 10K so quick. Yeah. I was very impatient. And I felt that, I can make up for all the money I lost in my failed venture. It was $30,000. So I was not patient at all, but I never stopped educating myself in the world of trading after. It kind of gave me something to do when I was in my depression, instead of just laying in my bed and doing nothing at all.
Yeah. So like you said, the Meetup, I guess trading in a way, it was kind of that light at the end of the tunnel for you, right? It kind of pulled you out of your depression in a way, right?
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree.
Yeah.
And then more or less later on, I constructed a profitable trading strategy. And in March 2018, I decided to pursue trading full time.
Nice.
And then I attended my first Montreal Traders Meetup group, which you host, in June 2018 while I was still depressed. Yeah. And I gotta say, the Montreal Traders group, it's like my second home, because explain to another person of what I do, because if I explain this to a normal person, they'll be like, huh? Like, just gambling in the stock market.
Yeah.
And then by 2018 of July, I made a full recovery and I got out of my depression.
Oh, congratulations, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy you're part of the community, and definitely happy that, you're sharing your perspective with us. So thanks again. So going back to trading for a second, so, you've kind of shared already, but what have been some of the bigger lessons that trading has brought you? Because, we all have this, trading is kind of an individual activity. We all bring our own baggage to trading, so to speak. What's kind of been some of the lessons and kind of the insights that you've come across since you've gotten deeper and deeper into your trading?
Of course. So I want to start off by basically telling you guys about the when I started value investing.
Okay.
I was buying these penny stocks because, in the real world, we're always trying to get the best for our money, right?
Right.
And that's why Boxing Day is so popular. And people are kind of fighting over merchandise, which I find it's just ridiculous. But it's understandable because many people only have one income, and that's from their job. I guess what I want to say is that in the stock market world, it is very difficult to analyze a worth of a company because it changes every day. And I bought two stocks that actually went bankrupt and became insolvent, which was THQ and National Bank of Greece.
Okay.
So also,
what'd you learn from that? So when those two went to zero, was that after those two?
Went to zero.
Okay, complete loss. Okay,
big loss because I was just value investing. I was, crossing my fingers and hoping it will go up.
Yeah.
Right, because I thought to myself, oh, I got it at such a good value.
Yeah.
It's gonna come up. It's gonna come up, even if it goes down to 10 cents.
Yeah, and it never came up, huh? It never came up. Right to zero. Yeah. So that was kind of your experience of value investing is always going to be some of those losers where it's going to be, we'll wipe you out, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then
do you, so it's not a knock on value investing. So do you believe that maybe you don't have the personality for value investing, or is that value investing is difficult as an endeavor, or what's your perspective about value investing?
The thing is, with value investing, everybody's just trying to, especially right now, everybody doesn't want to buy Canopy Growth Corporation. They want to buy the penny stocks, which is T-God or Aurora or Afria. And they don't have the same market cap as Canopy Growth Corporation, and they don't have the same resource as them. So I don't see why they should buy into the company, because I think Canopy is gonna kind of crush all of them, and I think they're just gonna be like me and they'll lose all their money when they value invest.
Yeah, interesting. So tell us more about your approach then. So it sounds like you're more likely to go after the higher flying names, the guys who are showing better momentum, better growth.
Yes.
So tell us more about your trading approach. How would you describe it, and categorize or share this what you typically do on a regular day in, day out basis?
So from what I learned from my value investing, right now when I'm trading, I only trade market leaders. I only touch those stocks because they're like the safest one. They won't go down to zero. They won't become bankrupt. And I believe there's a much more of a safety net than compared to like penny stocks or something that's in the same sector.
Yeah.
And the fact that when you're trading market leaders, they are much more predictable in comparison to penny stocks.
Yeah. And so what's your approach then? So what do you typically do? Do you swing trade them? Do you day trade them? You know, if you day trade them or swing trade them, how active are you? Do you get in and out quite often, or do you, once you find a trend, you tend to hang on as long as you can? What's your approach?
So I, at the moment, in this market, I'm more of a swing trader and a day trader.
Okay.
And for me, when I day trade, I kind of just look at the resistance points and also the support lines.
Yeah.
And when I swing trade, it's just I use 3 indicators, which is the MACD, the simple moving average, and the exponential moving average.
Okay.
So I really believe in the 3S, which is sexy, simple, and sleek.
Okay.
So simple because you're using easy indicators that you understand.
Yeah.
Sexy, that because of the chart, has to look sexy. And sleek is basically that it needs enough volume for you to trade it.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. And so maybe go back a bit. So, you know, it's currently October 20th. So you said you're mostly swing trading and day trading stocks in this current environment. What's unique about this environment that causes you to do that? So what do you mean by this environment for those folks who may be listening to this?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So at the moment, the market is so choppy. If I'm not mistaken, last week we had was it this week? We had an 8% drop on the SPY. You know, if you were holding long, you would have lost a lot of money. But I still think that the market now is still bullish, and we will need to wait until next week to confirm that at this point.
Okay. So because the markets are a little more volatile now, you tend to be a little quicker on the draw to make sure you're not getting caught up in some of these names.
I think that's really important because you need to learn all the strategies, whether it's a holding long, swing trading, day trading, because the market is very dynamic and you don't know what's going to happen. And every time something happens, you have to change your strategy.
Yeah. And so what do you say to those folks, you know, who have been investing in these marijuana stocks for some time now? And how do you adjust, you know, like, how do you time that? Let's say you're like, you know, more of a longer term guy. How do you adjust that and say, oh, well, you know, maybe I bought Tilray or CGC at lower prices, you know, do they sell out? You know, do they close their positions and start to trade more actively? Or like, because if you started at a lower price point, you just sit back and say, okay, I'm just going to sit through this volatility. Do you have any ideas around that?
So the thing with value investing, most people have a full-time job, and it's hard for them to get out of the trade while they are working.
Sure.
I tried to do it, but I was paranoid as hell because I was scared of my boss walking in and see that I'm actually trading and I'm not working.
All these charts on your screens and
exactly, right? Yeah. I'm afraid that I'm gonna get fired in a way.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult, like to actually say. I would trade on, if you're like a long-term investor, I would trade on the news. So recently we kind of legalized weed. I would trade up until that point, and I would sell it the day before just to be more risk averse. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of the way it played out, right? So people kind of sold the news when it came out, and the last couple of days.
It happens all the time. Sold the news.
That's a great lesson there, right? Buy the rumor, sell the news. Yeah. Because had you held some of these names for the past couple of days, you probably you lost a lot of money, right?
It's funny. People actually, on the day of legalization, they bought in the morning, and I was like,
yeah, that is. It's so funny, some of these patterns, right? It's just unfortunately like the retail trader tends to buy in at the worst times when you have the most media hype. Is probably when you want to be getting out of the trade and not getting into a trade for the first time, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's a very good lesson for folks out there. So tell us more about your trading. So do you trade all day long? Do you trade only for certain times during the day? What's kind of your sweet spot as pertains to your trading approach?
So I'm not quite of a obsessive guy.
Okay.
So when I get into something, I'm like, I put all my attention into it. So even if I'm not trading, I'm still looking at the market and I'm looking at certain stocks because most of the time for me as a trader, I like to trade things that I know. And each stock or each company has its own personality. And knowing its personality, I feel that I can make a lot of money off of that, especially day trading.
Okay.
Because it reacts a certain way during a certain time, and it always happens.
So do you typically watch like a basket of stocks, or do you just trade whatever's kind of flying, or it's kind of a high flyer that day or that session?
No, I have a list of stocks that it's like my go-to list. I don't screen my stocks at all, or I check the percentage of the movements. I just trade stocks that I know. Okay.
And how big of a list do you typically track? How many stocks is that?
It's not much because I'm on the Canadian side, so I trade mostly Canadian stocks, and that's why I don't trade the U.S. side because when you trade it on the U.S. side, for me, it's like information overload.
Yeah.
There's too much for me to concentrate on. Yeah. So I rather stick to a simple market, which is the Toronto Stock Exchange. Yeah. And also, you can always get, a company, basically like Canopy Growth Corporation. It's in Canada, and it's also listed on the New York Stock Exchange. So what's the point? You're basically trading the same thing.
Yeah. And so how many symbols do you think are on your watch list? Like half a dozen, maybe more than?
I would say around 25 or so.
Okay, cool. And then how do you keep your eye on those 25? Do you have some sort of systematic approach where you review those companies on a regular basis, or do you look at the charts on a regular basis? What's your method that you use to make sure that you're kind of keeping on the pulse of those 25 stocks?
So I have charts surrounding me. So I actually use my desktop, my laptop, my 2 tablets.
Yeah.
Well, I'm like fully loaded.
Yeah, it's all around you. It's all over here.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so do you just do like, if you could share your process, is it like a daily thing you do to review all 25 symbols? Is it like a weekly process where you do a deeper dive? Like what's your kind of approach to keeping on top of those 25 symbols?
For me, it's just seeing especially in the morning, I always check how much percentage it has moved, whether it's up or down.
Okay.
And mostly those stocks have a higher interest. I'm more interested in them because they have greater volatility.
Gotcha. So for the intraday trading basis, you're kind of looking for the guys who are popping up or popping down.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Cool. And so when you talk about your day trading for a second, how many trades you typically take in a day? If I could ask.
Yeah, of course. Sometimes it's just 2. Sometimes it's 10 to 15.
Okay.
So I'm quite active.
Yeah.
And then some days I don't even take a trade.
Oh, that's yeah. I think that's challenging for a lot of traders, right? Because like you said, like especially if you trade American markets, there's thousands of symbols that you could be trading, and then most traders, especially the ones who are having our time, are probably trading too much, right? They don't know how not to take trades. It's like there's so many symbols. It's like, how do you not see trades everywhere? So how do you do it? So one way is obviously because you have a smaller watch list. You only get 25, and you kind of focus on those 25. How do you do it so that you're not over trading? How do you do it so that on some days, like you said, you take 0 trades and you're okay with that? What are you looking at to say, okay, I'm not trading today? What's going on in your head, or what are you seeing that's allowing you to say, okay, I'm going to sit on my hands and do nothing?
Yeah. So in the beginning, when I got market data, I was over trading because I was actually trading on the 1-minute charts.
Okay.
And
I'll give you a lot of signals. So yeah,
you get signals all the time, right?
Yeah, sure.
And it's crazy. I think so. What I do is from 9:30 when the market opens to 10 o'clock, I'm on the 2-minute chart.
Okay.
And as the day progresses, after 10 o'clock, I change it to the 5-minute chart and the 4-hour chart. And that's how I go about basically kind of seeing if I should take a trade or not. So more on the slower side by trading on the 5-minute chart instead of the 1-minute chart.
Sure. And so for your intraday trades, can you describe like maybe like an example of a pattern that you look for that you might trade? Is it a combination of the indicators that you use, or are you looking at price action, or a combination of those things to get you into trades?
Yep. So I mostly look at price actions and the pattern that has occurred over the week, because there's a lot of stocks that have the same pattern every 2 days or every 3 days, and if it looks similar, I would just get into it. I'm confident that it would either be a good trade if I go short or if I go long. And I told you about weed, right? Just yesterday or the day before, it was just the exact same pattern, and it kind of just fell all the way down, and everyone. Yeah.
That was a great trade. Yeah, you and I were supposed to talk actually on Friday afternoon, and then we got on the call to start our interview. And then I asked you, hey, is it a good time to talk? And I say, it was a good time, but now it looks like, we is falling apart. I said, hey, let's reschedule this call because
exactly
first, right? And it's funny because I ended up taking the same short as you did after you told me that. And I'm like, oh, I see a good pattern too. So what was that pattern that you saw there? So you said that you saw a similar thing happen earlier in the week. What kind of short? Because it was a short, obviously, because CGC and weed were going down on Friday, October the 19th. So what was that pattern? What did that look like to you?
So it was just the exact same pattern in the morning. So it had the exact same shape, and it just kept on going down. Yes, it bounced back a couple times, but the day before it occurred. So you could have, shorted it, went long a little bit, and then shorted again just until the end, until the indicators tell you to get out of the position. Yeah,
good one. So let's change gears for a second. Let's talk more about the trading, but maybe a slightly different approach. So what has helped you most in terms of advancing and developing your trading? So tell us maybe about your learning process and how you try to constantly get better with your trading. What do you do, and what does that process look like?
So how I learned, especially in the beginning, is I watch YouTubers who actually day trade online. Okay. And one of them is called, I'm not sure if you know, his name is Mir Barak. He's like the owner of TradeNet.
Okay, I don't know that name.
Yeah, he's a momentum trader, and he makes a lot of money. He makes like $300K a year, and he's been in the game for like 10 years or so. So whenever he gets into a trade, he doesn't really tell you what he sees. He just shows you, right? Okay. So it was very difficult in learning from him in the beginning. Yeah. But there are other guys that I've learned from. One of them is his name is called Ricky Gutierrez.
Okay.
He's from Arizona. Huh. He's in his 20s. He's like a millionaire, and he's a conservative trader.
Okay.
The third person that I follow is Garen Phillips.
I don't know that name either. That's really neat.
So Garen Phillips, he's pretty much a new trader.
Okay.
And if I'm not mistaken, a month ago, he blew up his account and everybody saw it. And, ouch. And from that, you can learn so much from them because he goes over his emotional state, what he should have done and what he could have done. Even though if you are an advanced trader, you can always learn from someone's mistake.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And for me, I use Ricky Gutierrez method of trading because he has established a winning strategy. And what I do is that I modify it to my own personality and to my own patience.
Yeah. And
with that, I think you will have a greater winning percentage in the market.
Nice. That's such a neat thing, right? Because the YouTube, YouTube gives just so much information, right? There's so many opportunities to learn from, like you said, like other traders. It's really fascinating to see that, you've kind of taken these three traders and you kind of modeled yourself after some of their methods and you kind of made it your own, right? That's kind of one of your messages in the Meetup was the importance of kind of understanding yourself. And then, as you said here, changing that trading method to make sure that fits you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that's a really powerful lesson there. So what else? So that's kind of for new traders, that's how you can learn maybe that's how you can kind of learn the ropes. How do you get better? What's one of your processes that you use to say, all right, if I'm not trading so well, if I need to get better at things, what's kind of things do you do?
Yeah, so this is where the trading journal comes in.
Yeah.
And it's very effective. You always have to ask yourself, why did you get into a trade? What did you see? Because only by documenting it, you'll learn from your mistakes. So what I do is before I get into a trade, I write down my emotions. I tell myself why I got into the trade. And then when I'm actually in the trade, I write down my emotions again and how I feel about it. You know, sometimes when you get into a trade, it could, it can go against you. And I kind of sort of write down my emotions. And then when I'm getting out of my trade, I also write down my emotions. So I document every part of the trade from the beginning to the middle to the end. And with that, you'll learn a lot about yourself, because there are some times when you kind of doubt yourself in a way, and you kind of have to stop that from happening when you want to execute your trading plan.
Yeah. And so do you find the process of documenting helpful, or is it the process of reviewing those things after the trade to be helpful? So is it the fact that you're getting it out while you're trading that's useful, or is it, after the fact you're like, okay, I was, if I look back at that trade, I can see clearly that I was, not in the right state of mind, or, I was in a great state of mind. Is it that review process that's really good for you, or is it more like getting it out to make sure that's not stuck in your head and maybe interfering?
For me, it's really the review process.
Okay.
And the reason is because, in life, we have other things that's happening, right?
Yeah.
Whether, some bad things can happen, like, you break your leg, you have a divorce, you had a fight with your friend and all that. It can really show up when you're actually trading, and it can really affect your emotions.
Yeah.
So by documenting and putting down on a piece of paper, you are actually kind of releasing those emotions, those negative emotions that you have that can actually, affect your trading.
Yeah. I think it's very valuable. And I think it's a great practice. I think it's a couple of things. I think, like, number one, I think a lot of times when I see people trade, they're unconscious about a lot of things, right? When they're trading. Yeah. So like you said, there's a lot of things that are running around in their heads that are probably affecting our performance, right? Sometimes, not sometimes, but lots of times, the previous trade can definitely bleed into a current trade. So if you lost money in a previous trade, it can definitely affect this trade because you may have some negative self-talk that's going on, or that kind of stuff. Likewise, it could be you could have had a really great trade before that, and that could also bleed into your next trade. And sometimes it's not always positive, right? Maybe you're a little bit too much of a risk taker now because you just made a really good trade, and it's not uncommon for some people who make really good trades to then make a really crappy trade afterwards because they feel so confident that they're actually a bit overconfident and they're taking a little too many risks, and the A setup is not there in terms of quality.
Or even when you sometimes rush into a trade, you don't know why, right? That's like the work.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I think it's harder to do if you take lots of trades too, right? Like if you're taking like 10, 20 trades a day, then it's kind of really hard to kind of get all those things out of your head on paper, right? Like,
exactly.
You're trading so much that it's hard to do. So if you trade a lot, then I think one of those things you have to think about is, number one, why am I trading so much, right? Like it's hard to trade a lot because, you have to have really good mental control and emotional control or regulation when you're trading that often, because you just have to be dialed in and not have any of that stuff kind of hold you back. And number two is just, I think a lot of people just are very unaware of that talk track that's going on constantly.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And, if you work by yourself in a room by yourself, then it's easy to do. And I always recommend people doing it. It's just to talk out loud. If you can't write down stuff, like that's a really good activity or a really good process to write things down. If you can't do that, I do advocate that. If you can't, then just talk out loud, right? Say, okay, I'm getting to this trade. I'm feeling this way. Like I'm feeling a little bit hesitant because I lost in that last trade. And, I'm kind of feel like a jerk right now. I'm, kind of hate myself right now because I did that. And, just verbalizing that, right? You're not going to get the positive benefit of being able to review it afterwards, but at least you can hear yourself talk about it and say, oh, I didn't realize I had that, that negative self-talk going on. And just by verbalizing it, right? You're like, okay, you're getting it out there and it's not getting, it's not
Yeah, I totally agree. I think self-development and trading is really interconnected. Mm-hmm. And what has helped me the most is actually taking self-development courses. Recently, I learned what it's called neuro-linguistic programming.
Sure, NLP.
Yeah, NLP, which is basically, what all the successful people do in using imagery techniques, in doing power poses, and just improving themselves every single day. And I took this course in Montreal from Darren Miller, and it has changed my trading completely because you become more confident and you throw all those negative imageries that you have in your head in the back, and you will get into the trade with conviction. Yeah.
So then, this leads right into the next question. So how important do you think is trading psychology?
I think it's basically it's number one, because I think if you don't have trading psychology, or if you're not competent in it, I think you'll lose a lot of money. I think especially for trading, if we use the 80%, 20% rule, I think 80% is trading psychology and 20% is actually the skill, because we're just bombarded with so many things every single day. And, being in this world and having social media and all that, we're just comparing ourselves too much. And we shouldn't do that, because what's happening is you're actually degrading yourself, and you should actually just focus on yourself. It doesn't matter if someone's making $1 million or whatever, but when you do it yourself and you trust yourself, you'll just have more confidence in you.
Yeah, great words, man. And you're just gonna have more fun doing it.
Yeah, exactly, right? Because you trust yourself and you're using your own techniques instead of someone else's.
Yeah. You
personalize it.
Yeah, and the fact that you're not always comparing yourself and setting an unrealistic benchmark. Then the process just becomes yours and just becomes more fun. So So what? So let's say someone right now is having psychological issues, and say, okay, maybe I'm having issues with FOMO, or maybe I'm having issues with like you said, confidence. What would you recommend to a person or a trader who has those types of struggles?
Yeah, so like I said before, you should take some self-development classes. And what I have right now is that I have a life coach. And that because after I went through depression, I wanted to change my life and to better my way of thinking, because when you're depressed, you just have a negative thought process. By having a life coach, you kind of delete all the mental blocks that you have in your mind. One of the mental blocks that I had in my mind about trading was that I thought you had to be like super rich, you have to be super smart, super intelligent, witty, and all that. But that's not true. Anybody can get into trading, and just every day, if you work on yourself, you'll be surprised at what you'll be able to accomplish. Okay. And if you want to talk about confidence, in order to get confidence, you have to have a certain competency and kind of try things, like try new trading strategies. And if you're not capable of doing that, then I don't think your confidence will ever grow.
So those two are kind of very tightly intertwined, huh? Yeah. So the activity of becoming more competent will give you more confidence.
Yes.
Yeah. So what else would you offer someone like that? So I really do believe, like you said, how we do anything is how we do everything. So it sounds like you're a real big advocate of, okay, if you struggle in trading, then you probably have some struggles that are outside of trading, and you need to kind of address that. Like maybe it's a life, it's not just trading, and that's also, they're kind of blended together. Think about things that are maybe you're having struggles with in life, and maybe that could be things that float back in your trading. Is that your idea?
Yeah, totally. Yep.
Yeah.
Because, even it doesn't have to be trading. Like, if you had a fight with your wife, when you go to work, you're going to be in a shitty mood, right? You're going to be more angry, and you're going to be more tense. It's the same thing. Everything can affect us.
Yeah. Good one, man. So let's begin to wrap things up here. So, you gave us a few resources already in terms of, some traders that you follow. Are there any other trading books or resources that you found valuable in your journey that you would recommend to other traders?
Yes. So I actually read this one book. It's not a trading book, but it's more of a financial independence book. Okay. It's called Your Money or Your Life by Vicki Robbins.
Okay.
So have you heard of it?
No, I have not.
Yeah, read it.
All these new resources today, which are awesome. I've not heard them, so I'll write down that.
Great. Excellent. Yeah. So that book was what actually propelled me to trade full time. And the reason is because in the book, it described very thoroughly about the many associated costs and risks of working a normal 9-to-5 job.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you get like your yearly salary is $50K, and you have to work 8 hours a day, you're not really considering the transportation time that it takes for you to go to work and go back home, right? So you might not be making $25 an hour, and you might be making like $19 an hour, because those are the associated costs and risks. Also, most people that work in an office, if they type too much, they get tendonitis, or when they sit too long, they get back pains.
Sure.
And, all these things can happen, especially stress, right? It can affect you, and you might need to see a psychologist. And then there are other things, such as the social aspect at work, where you don't really want to interact with your colleagues, but you have to, right? Because, you need to work on your team building skills or whatever, and the boss forced you to. And sometimes you just don't want to go to those Christmas parties at work, right?
And so that book motivated you to look at other avenues, huh?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, nice.
I have another a book. It's more of a trading book that I would recommend, and that book is called Trade Like the Casino by Richard Weissman.
Okay, yeah, that's a great book.
Yeah, I loved it because you're basically measuring your risk reward ratio, and you're actually playing the house in the stock market instead of the casino playing the house.
Right.
So I would enjoy that book, but I wouldn't recommend, especially beginners or even advanced people, to read technical analysis books, because it was like the book that I read was 600 pages, and the author just listed more or less all the technical analysis or the patterns that he saw.
Yeah.
I read it and I was like, oh, maybe, this will help me in the future, but it did not help me at all. So you really have to find books that you connect with and that you can resonate with, so that you'll actually finish reading the book instead of just reading it on the side. Yeah.
Well, that's definitely a good point, man. Because there's a big difference between simply knowing a pattern and actually being able to trade it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You see a lot of folks who are maybe they're kind of overweighted in information, and they don't actually have enough experience to actually use that or use it effectively.
For sure.
Yeah. So that's a very good point. There's a real big difference there. So I really enjoyed our conversation today. Any last maybe tips or any other pieces of advice you'd like to give someone who's maybe interested in the trading thing, but maybe is a little bit maybe newer to the game? What would you give to them as a starting point? Where would you give them? Should they start with books, videos? What would you since you've kind of been through the the beginning stages and you've gone to the full-time trading thing, what's kind of the path you would recommend people take?
For me, it's just doing it. So even if it means risking your money, and the fact that when you do it, you kind of get the whole aspect of it. When you do it instead of basically paper trading and doing it live, you get the whole emotional aspect of it. And you might learn that maybe trading is not for you, and maybe also in the future that might change, because that's what happened to me, because I was a value investor previously, and now I went to full-time trading. And so for me, it's like, if you don't try, you will never know, and you'll never get exposed to these types of things. Yeah.
And just by stepping in you can take getting your feet wet. That's the only way you can begin to figure out who you are and what's going to resonate with you in your trading, right?
Yeah.
So great message, man. So I just want to thank you again for your time today, Terrence. It was really nice to to catch up with you and to talk with you further. If people liked what you talked about today, where can people find out more about you? Where can they follow you? Where can they find you online?
Yes, of course. So I concentrate most of my efforts on my self-discovery blog at www.millennialspath.com, where I write about 3 topics: depression, lifestyle, and finance, which also includes trading. All my social media links are there, such as YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, and LinkedIn. I also offer a consultation service such as life coaching, stock trading, and financial planning. And I have just recently finished writing my ebook titled Using Your Anger to Conquer Depression, and it will it will be released at the end of the year. And hopefully in 2019, I will start writing a trading book.
Wow, lots of stuff on your plate, man. So,
Yes.
so really happy to hear that. So once again, thanks so much for being on our first show, man. Really enjoy your story, and I hope everyone who listens to this also gets as much as I got out of our conversation today.
Yeah, thank you for having me here today.
You're very welcome. So have a great night, and thanks everyone for tuning in today. All right, talk to you later.
Thank you.
See ya.